to gain some perspective. The generation is in its last stages. You could say that. Now, I'm going to give you a few general facts about it. It took place in 1944, 70 years ago, and it was a major operation involving a lot of men, a lot of equipment. The weather turned out to be kind of bad on the eve of the operation. They were going into the morning where the light was up. We were basically going across the English Channel. Now, Nazi Germany was holding this beach. A lot of different names for the beaches there, but it's basically Normandy. It's the coastline. This was formerly France, but it had become part of the German Empire under the war. Military empire. So these fortifications were up on the beach. If you ever seen some beaches go way up, you've got a cliff or a dune, or maybe some rocks and things in there. So they had the advantage. If they do an amphibious landing, they're going to be shot down at, and they have to somehow get up. And this is the issue there, to overcome that during the battle. What they also did was airborne drop. They had that division come behind the enemy lines, so you could stab them in the back. Unfortunately, a lot of this was off the mark during those days. These days, you would expect the military to be able to be more precision. But as far as the amphibious was the bulk of the attack, so it came in waves. First wave was almost sure to get cut to pieces with much more than 50% losses. So this is the sacrifice that we're remembering today. If you think in terms of war and the advantages that you get from victories in these battles, okay, I'm being philosophical here. I'm not the same type of historian that you're used to. I go one step further to understand these things. Now, I'm not necessarily against the Germans, right? It's hard to look at it historically and take a side. Although I will tell you, most of the propaganda, or the story of the war in the West, is that the Germans were evil. I know a lot of Germans. I've grown up with German Americans. They are a certain way. You could almost fit them into some kind of stereotype, but they're human too. They have families. They had losses. Yeah, of course they had losses. D-Day was a massive loss for both of these sides. Let me tell you something in particular about it. Since my book focuses on FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, I recommend everybody to read it if you're interested in these things. I did a lot of hard work on it, and I think you will really enjoy it. Now, of course, this is under the commander-in-chief. He put Eisenhower as the head of the operation. And you might remember at that time there was some trouble with Patton. He was another great general, but he wasn't always following all the rules he's supposed to with the brass and with the administration. And also I know that Eisenhower had a much better track record, but even had more respect and rapport with the French. I mean, not only the French, but with the British. That's what I meant to say. Patton was not in favor with the British. But of course, Patton was really a good tank general. We really don't see a lot of tank action with D-Day. Um, it's just a lot of infantry. You're talking about just men coming out of the water with whatever they've got. Tanks were involved on land if they could from certain parts of France. I can't go into all the minute details of that. But what I wanted to say, because I brought up the president, being Roosevelt, one of his relatives, fifth cousin, now actually Teddy Roosevelt, who many of you know, on Mount Rushmore, you know the face. Everybody also knows the face of FDR. That's FDR face. But in some people's minds, and even in America, we may confuse the two presidents. Theodore Roosevelt was before World War I. Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, was during World War II. So they're separated by a big span there. They're fifth cousins once removed. But D-Day had Teddy Roosevelt's son, Theodore Jr. He's actually, if I get this right, Theodore III, landed at D-Day. Now you try to figure that one out, because he was the oldest man, or oldest officer, to go into this battle. He got awarded during this. Okay. Even Eisenhower called him up with the award. But the day that he called him, unfortunately, Theodore Roosevelt had died the previous night. So was awarded posthumously. Now what happened to him? During the D-Day, he came on and he was supposed to land on Omaha Beach. But it turns out they were more than a mile off course. I think they had drifted to the east, more towards where the Netherlands is, Holland. So he figured that out, and he commanded his men to take the beach. We take it here. So that's what he did. He made an adjustment, and he boosted the morale and the courage of his men that whole day of the battle, and that's why he deserved the medal, the award. He met with one of his sons later on. It was several days later, and he went to bed in one of the army trucks and didn't wake up. So that's what happened to the fifth cousin of FDR, Teddy Roosevelt's son. But I might add, so that you put things into better understanding, is that these two cousins did not get along at all. And I won't get into that right now, but I will give you one other factoid. This Teddy Roosevelt's son was the founder of the American Legion, one of the founders. But he didn't become the president of the American Legion because he thought it wouldn't look good politically. What else can I tell you about it? In conclusion, I want to say that the view of it from other quarters is not the same. There are some Russian revisionist thinkers who really feel that D-Day should have been pulled off a little bit earlier, so that we might be having a 72nd or 73rd anniversary right now instead of a 70th anniversary. They feel like it was delayed because of a conspiracy between Hitler and Churchill. Now, I would entertain that, but I'm not sure how it can be proven. You'd have to get enough documents or at this point. You see, the longer you go, the longer you stall with trying to figure out these things, the harder it is to prove. As a historian, you get to realize this. But if you could put together a good circumstantial argument, then people will come to understand it that way. I want to put it more into perspective by saying how much the Soviets did at that time under Stalin. 5 times, 6 times, 7 times more the amount of fighting in divisions and battles. I want you to look up, if you want to understand D-Day relatively, look up the Battle of Kursk, K-U-R-S-K, which is a town that's south of Moscow, and it's a little bit east of Kiev in Ukraine. Right now, that's where the Russians have gone through by Kursk. That whole region witnessed the worst battle on the earth that we have ever known about, the Battle of Kursk. It makes D-Day look like a picnic, a duck walk. So I salute the Americans, but I think we got to get it into perspective that the Russians did a hell of a lot more. It doesn't deny the American Allied effort. It doesn't deny that, but it puts it into proper perspective. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please feel free to make your comments. We need to understand things before 70 years. There's stuff going on right now that need to be known.